What's up guys, my name is Brandon and the 2018 iPad Pro is my first iPad purchase since 2013 and the iPad Mini 2. And the reason for that is because I've just really never had a use for an iPad. I just really didn't feel like spending $1,000 on something I knew I would not use, and Apple really never sold me on an iPad at any of their previous events. That is, of course, until this year, 2018, with the all-new, completely redesigned iPad Pro. So of course, the very first thing about the new iPad Pro that piqued my interest was the massive 12.9-inch display with minimal bezels. Of course, the overall thinness of the iPad Pro and the weight also intrigued me. It only weighs about 2 pounds because, of course, in the past, I've kind of just always associated iPads with being heavy, having lots of bezel around the screen, and just a bigger version of the iPhone. And this iPad Pro just looked and still looks like a tablet of the future. And not only does the design of the iPad Pro look amazing, but it also feels fantastic in the hand. It feels like you're literally holding a piece of high-end glass, of course, when you're using it without a case. And like I mentioned, I do have the 12.9-inch model right here, but the iPad Pro also comes in an 11-inch model, which replaces last year's 10.5-inch model, and the two are pretty much the same size. Of course, you just do get a bigger screen on the 11-inch model of 2018. And what's great about the 12.9-inch model as well is that the overall size is reduced by 25% in terms of overall volume versus last year's iPad Pro. And you're going to notice this literally instantly, right? Once you get this in your hand, you're going to notice a big difference in weight, in the screen, and just everything, the way it looks compared to the 2017 iPad Pro. And I do just want to quickly mention, since I've already mentioned multiple times about how light the iPad is, I do just want to stress that you're really not going to want to hold this with one hand. First of all, it just feels really awkward to hold it with one hand, and after a while you will notice that your arm does get tired. I mean, it is only 2 pounds. It's a little bit more when you throw a case on, but you're still going to mostly be using this with 2 hands, at least the 12.9-inch model. I would imagine the 11-inch model is the same as well, but you're really just going to want to use 2 hands when using this iPad pretty much at all times. The other thing you'll notice instantly about the new iPad Pro is the lack of the home button and the headphone jack. So instead of the good old home button and Touch ID, we now have Face ID to secure our iPad, and I love this change because the home button just makes tablets and phones look outdated in 2018 going into 2019. Face ID is extremely quick and accurate on the iPad Pro, which surprised me because it really is better than the iPhone XS Max in my experience. It's also great that Face ID works in any orientation that you hold the iPad in, and there's actually an indicator that will tell you when you are covering the front-facing camera and that it can't scan for your face. And let me just tell you right now, that will happen multiple times to you because without that home button, it's kind of hard to tell which way you're picking up the iPad, which way is the right way, I should say, you're picking up the iPad. As for the screen itself, the 12.9-inch model has a resolution of 2048 by 2732 with a pixel density of 265 ppi, and this is an LCD screen, but it is the Liquid Retina LCD screen, so it does look amazing. It looks better than the iPhone XR. The colors are just extremely vibrant and accurate, and I just really love the way the screen looks. We do also have the ProMotion display, which does give us a refresh rate of up to 120 Hertz and makes everything just feel buttery smooth, especially on the latest version of iOS 12. We also have True Tone on this iPad Pro to adapt the screen to the color surrounding you, which is nice. The lack of the headphone jack originally didn't bother me too much, but then when I took into account that this is a device meant for pro users and that some people will actually be using this iPad to make instrumentals or just record things in high quality, I disagreed with the move by Apple. I just think that if someone is going to be using pro level equipment with the iPad Pro, it's going to be powered by a headphone jack, not Bluetooth. I mean, you're going to have like phantom power, you're going to have really high-end equipment that needs the headphone jack. So for that reason, I kind of disagree that Apple did not include the headphone jack with the new iPad Pro. Now, I understand that they weren't going to be able to get rid of the home button if they didn't remove the headphone jack and whatever else they want to say that they did, but I think that they needed to find a way to put the headphone jack into this iPad Pro if you're really going to tailor this to pro users. Switching over to exterior speakers, we have the same 4-speaker setup on the 2018 iPad Pro, 2 on the bottom and 2 on top, but the speakers themselves actually have been completely redesigned, and man, do these things get loud. It is just a joy watching movies and being able to hear the low voices without needing to turn up the volume on this iPad Pro. It's also great for games like PUBG and Fortnite, where you need to be able to hear enemy footsteps and gunshots. You won't really need a headset for that because these speakers are just that loud. And the sound is just full. It's like surround sound. You don't feel like the sound is going up top or down the bottom. It feels like it's coming right at you from the iPad. It's just like true surround sound. sound, and it just sounds great. Now, as for the battery in the new iPad Pro, we have a massive 9720 milliamp hour battery inside, and battery life overall has been great. Hasn't been fantastic, it's just been great. I can easily get through 2 days of usage without needing to charge. I was hoping to see 3 days with this iPad Pro, but I can get through 2 days with some gaming on PUBG, browsing on social media, and just going through web browsing and different things like that. I don't really use it too hard, but I do get over 2 days of usage on a typical day. Now, if you look at the battery charts and settings, you can see a visual of the kind of battery life I've been getting recently. You can see on Tuesday, I played a lot of PUBG and had 8.5 hours of on-screen time and still had just under 80% battery remaining, which is super impressive for this given day. And the reason I haven't been using this specific iPad Pro as much, this is the 64 gig variant, is because I actually went and bought a 256 gig version because I plan on replacing the 64 gig with a 256 gig. That this 64 gig variant was just not going to be enough space for me. I plan on having this for years. I don't plan on upgrading, when the new iPad Pro comes out, because it's not going to be a complete redesign like this. So I figured I'm going to have a lot of movies I want to load up on there. Games take up a lot of space. I want to be able to have a lot of extra memory left over. So I decided to upgrade from 64 to 256. And this comes from somebody who doesn't even have any music on here. All my photos are in iCloud. I just need that 256 gigabytes of storage space. And I would recommend you do the same. I thought I could get by with 64 gigs, but I was wrong. Now, if you're not going to download any movies, from iTunes, if you're not going to have any songs from iTunes, if you're not going to have any photos, then obviously you can stick with 64 gigabytes. But if you're planning on having videos for offline use, like for when you travel and things like that, I would highly recommend you get at least the 256 gigabyte variant. Now, charging the iPad up does take a few hours with the included 18-watt USB-C adapter, because yes, we do have USB-C on the new iPad Pro, and it's fast, but it could be faster with something like the 30-watt MacBook adapter. I have not personally tested this, but I would imagine that you do get a faster charge there from the 30-watt adapter. The overall speed of the new iPad Pro and the all-new A12X Bionic chip is also extremely impressive. Its benchmark scores are ridiculously high. You can see here on Antutu, it got a 554 639 with a crazy high 311 924 on the GPU test, which is just insane. Now, as for the Geekbench scores, it got a 5010 in the single core and a 18 243 multi-core score in the CPU test, which is also very impressive. And benchmarks don't always tell the full story when it comes to speed, but once you pick up and use this iPad, you will notice the speed instantly. Apps load up quickly, games play flawlessly, multitasking is just super seamless and it never lags. I've edited raw DSLR photos with Photoshop Express. I've imported and exported 4K videos. I've played PUBG on the highest settings possible, and just nothing made this device slow down or even hiccup at all. There's just really nothing negative to say about the performance of this iPad Pro at all. It's blazing fast, and it's also noticeably faster than last year's iPad Pro. And while there are some great applications in the App Store specifically made for the iPad, I found myself wishing there were more applications built just around the iPad and not the iPhone. I just really wish, and I can't wait for the day because I know it has to be eventually coming, to get Final Cut Pro on the iPad Pro. That would just be incredible. I would just like an application that would take full advantage of the Apple Pencil. I wish there was a full-fledged Photoshop app, which actually is coming. They showed that at the keynote as well. Photoshop CC for the iPad is coming, and I cannot wait for that because, like I said, I did use Photoshop Express, but that just really isn't near what Photoshop CC is. And the reason I bring this up about the applications is because sometimes I just get bored of this iPad Pro. In all reality, I just run out of things to do on it. So I just wish there was more to do on it. I mean, it's not something I use for work every single day or anything like that. So it's not really a huge productivity beast for me. I have my computer for that, but I just find myself running out of things to do on the iPad Pro. So I really wish that there were some more applications built around the iPad specifically. Now, I will say that the Apple Pencil 2nd generation does add a very intriguing aspect to this new iPad Pro, especially if you're a good artist. Now, I am nowhere near an artist unless there's such thing as a stick figure artist, but I still find joy in using the pencil. I mean, it's extremely precise and super fun to use for drawing and even just navigating around OS. Although I will say it's not a stylus. I mentioned this in my unboxing video as well. So you will have to use your hands for things like going to the home screen, multitasking, and just anything that uses the gestures on the iPad Pro. You can't use the Apple Pencil for that. But you can see the precision in the pencil when drawing in an application like Notes or Adobe Illustrator Draw. The Apple Pencil now has a sensor inside that can detect taps, so you can double tap to switch between pencil and eraser, or set it up to perform another action. You can change that inside of settings. And the way that the Apple Pencil now connects and charges is a huge leap forward from last year's Apple Pencil. It was really awkward last year with the 2017 iPad Pro, but now it magnetically connects to the top or the side depending on the orientation of the iPad for storing, but also for charging. So once you connect it, you can see that you do get an indicator that shows it's connected along with the battery percent. And the pencil itself also feels more like an actual pencil, and it doesn't roll off your desk when you set it down like last year's did. Now, although it is pretty expensive at $130, it is a must-have for artists and note takers, and just a nice accessory to have for everybody else. Now, another accessory available for the iPad Pro is the Smart Folio cover, either with or without the keyboard. Now, I opted to go with the normal one without a keyboard because I don't use it as much, and it's a whopping $200 versus $100, but you will quickly realize that after using this device without a case that you're gonna need a case eventually. And using this case as a stand is probably the number one reason that I wanted to get this case. That way I'm not staring down with bad posture, like just staring down in my lap of the iPad Pro all the time. It's just really bad posture and your neck eventually gets tired from that. So that was the moment I knew I needed the Smart Folio cover. I just needed some kind of case really, so I didn't have to sit there and hold it like this or just hold it like this. It gets tiring. You really do need a folio case with this iPad, at least the 12.9 inch version. And plus you definitely need a case in case you actually drop the iPad, because I don't know if you guys saw those drop test videos, but this iPad Pro is extremely delicate, so you don't want to drop this without a case. Now obviously if you are trying to replace your computer or your laptop, you'll definitely want to get the Smart Keyboard case, the Smart Folio case. It's $200, like I said, from Apple. I'm sure there are alternatives out there, but I just really can't see how this iPad Pro can fully replace a computer unless the only thing you do on your computer is browse the web. Which, by the way, I get that. I mean, I know a lot of people only use their computer for note-taking and just browsing the web and doing their projects for school and things like that. But for me personally, I could never replace my computer with this iPad Pro because I just use very intensive things like Final Cut Pro, Photoshop, I download torrents, I do all this stuff that I do on my computer that I could just never do on this new iPad Pro. Before I can even consider having this iPad Pro replace my computer like my MacBook Pro, I need to see at least Final Cut Pro on here. I need a better file management system, something where I don't have to always save my files in the cloud or have to email them to myself. I mean, I shouldn't have to do that in 2018 going into 2019 on a device like the iPad Pro. I mean, it's touted as a pro device. It's meant for pro users. We should have a file system on this device now. We shouldn't have to rely on the cloud and emailing ourselves files. So yeah, for all those reasons, I just don't see how this could ever replace a computer for somebody like me. But I understand that I'm not like everybody. A lot of people only use it for web browsing and note-taking and things like that. And for those people, this could easily replace your computer. And oh yeah, by the way, there is a camera on the iPad Pro, and it's also pretty great, but you just likely aren't gonna be going around snapping photos and taking videos with this behemoth of a device. I just can't see that happening unless you want to get laughed at. It does also have the ability to take portrait photos and portrait selfies, which is pretty cool. It can also record 4K video at 60 FPS, which is really impressive for a tablet. And Smart HDR is really the secret sauce that makes this camera and the cameras on the iPhone XS and the iPhone XR so great. But yeah, if you ever wanted to take photos and video with an iPad, this new iPad Pro is going to be the best for doing so. And by the way, that camera bump on the back is just huge. So all in all, the 2018 iPad Pro is a fantastic device, but for pro users, it just isn't quite pro enough. It just lacks pro applications and functions, and it also lacks a pro file management system. And for those reasons, like I mentioned, this could never replace my MacBook Pro, and I have a hard time believing that this could replace a computer for a lot of people, besides, of course, like I mentioned, those people that only use their computer for web browsing and note-taking. And at this point, I just feel like iOS is holding the iPad back. I feel like it's just an iPhone first software instead of a tablet first software, and that's really holding the new iPad Pro back. I would love to see Apple develop a tablet first OS for the iPad in the future. So if you are not a pro user and you just want a super blazing fast iPad to use for relatively simple tasks day in and day out, I cannot recommend the 2018 iPad Pro enough. It is awesome to travel with. Movies and videos are just awesome to watch on this display. The speakers are fantastic. Playing games is just next level. I mean, I cannot tell you how much better the gaming experience is on the iPad versus something like the iPhone XS Max or a small iPad mini. It's really great for note-taking if you are in college, Of course, you will want to invest in the Apple Pencil as well if you are planning on note taking. It's just everything you love in an iPad made better and made with a better design. So anyways, guys, there you have it. That is my full review of the 2018 iPad Pro. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also leave a comment down below if you bought the new iPad Pro, if you're planning on buying it. Let me know what you think about the 2018 iPad Pro altogether down in the comment section below. Also make sure to check out my other videos on the iPad Pro. Those are all linked up in the cards right now and also down in the description below. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you soon.